For the sake of anonymity, I prefer to keep my name and that of all my colleagues anonymous while telling the story. A very popular coffee shop in my town is where I work as a barista. I had been working the night shift from 5 p.m. till 10 p.m. During my time at the office, I was surrounded by some of my favorite coworkers who go by A and S names, as well as my preferred shift supervisor who will be identified as M. The lobby was closed for security reasons, and we closed it early due to an hour before closing time. We had to call the police because we witnessed both homeless people purposely obstructing the door when baristas were leaving, and suspicious individuals who were locked in the bathroom after work hours but refused to leave. Unlike those nights, this one was not. S and I were both working on mobile drinks and preparing the next drive-thru order when we heard a noise coming from the drive-thru speaker on our headsets. A pair of men were shouting. Our drive-thru cameras showed that the driver of a minivan was screaming at someone outside as he ordered drinks for his wife and children, who were also in the vehicle. The man's attempt to open the bag doors in front of the children resulted in them crying and screaming, leaving them extremely scared. If the man didn't stop screaming to help, he might have problems. The driver is punched in the face, and the door is attempted by the guy to unlock it. The man tried to remove the drive-thru from the vehicle, but his wife yelled and held him under her husband's steering wheel. The police were contacted by Supervisor M and Barista A, who had heard the noise on their headset and were in close proximity to the phone, without my or S knowing anything. The individual had rushed to the nearby fast food eatery without being seen by the police during their arrival. The man was seized by the police after they arrived, much to their surprise. In the parking lot of a nearby fast food restaurant, he had attacked an elderly woman who was leaving her car. The dog took hold of the sick canine on his leg after causing some minor injuries. After handcuffing the man and getting him into the car, our supervisor texted our boss and recorded the incident report, while the other police officers questioned us and our family members about the event. The senior citizen was unharmed, with only minor facial bruises, and the family was secure. The driver was hit in the face by the other man, resulting in bloody nose and minor bruises. The children were given sweet bakery items as a result of us covering all their drinks. Despite the fact that no one was seriously hurt, it was a night to remember. It's a reminder to be cautious and mindful of your surroundings, particularly when working late at night. As a 32-year-old driver, I've been with Metro for 8 years. It was a great experience, and I was always eager to start my shifts. It's been a few months since my colleague asked me to shift out and work in the mornings, and I'll take his late shifts. I have encountered a couple of inebriated and impudent passengers who were too unproductive to exit the terminal, but these incidents are not uncommon. A week ago, I was driving. Around 10:30 p.m., I heard strange noises. Upon arriving at the nearby station, I detected that the sounds emanating from my cab door, which divides the passenger's quarters into the driver's berth. Despite the CCTV footage, the Metro car was not functioning that night. Since I couldn't see anything on the camera, I opted to ignore the noises and continue shooting. I heard a loud noise coming from the driver's cab door as I began to drive. As I stated earlier, it's a modern train that comes with SOS buttons and speakers. It was incredibly strange that someone would approach the front and knock on the door, especially when the train is in between two stations. When I reached my next destination, I had a moment of hesitation. I resolved to break through the door and see what was going on. You could be forgiven for thinking that it was not a good idea. Without delay, a man gave me an S for my money, cell phone, and any belongings I had. The man had ample time to activate the panic alarm, which is a red button located inside the driver's cabin and connects the vehicle to the control center room. The red button made a loud beeping noise for 15 seconds, causing the man to freeze. Fortunately, the police officers arrived and became aware of the situation. The man was taken into custody. My colleague was arrested as well, and the police later informed me that he had been involved in the robbery. It seems that he was furious with the company and made the decision to harm them. It transpired that he had only exchanged shifts with me that night to enable me to work the night shift and his associate to handle the rest. Despite the incident, I was thankful for my cooperation and continued to work with the company. The purpose of this narrative is to observe oneself, as even someone you know may be a criminal and cause you harm. I work as a paralegal in Savannah, Georgia, and I'm 31 years old. For the past 3 years, I have been practicing as a paralegal at this location. Our team has been taking on new cases, and we have recently recruited new personnel to assist with them. Anthony, a tall and big black man who was probably in his late 20s, was one of the new hires. It appears that Anthony was new to work, having only completed his degree a month before being hired. When he would repeatedly ask me to help him with a project, I always kept this in mind. Anthony never had an unusual personality, but after hearing some rumors, I started to notice some peculiar things about him. It was reported that a colleague of mine had voiced her discontent with him approaching her to the lawyers. He would constantly make comments about his appearance and stand there, staring at her whenever he thought she wasn't looking. I was taken aback by this rumor. I had always assumed he was socially awkward, but never felt any creepiness towards him. Despite my efforts to ignore it, it still stuck in my mind when I was with him. Things became somewhat odd a few weeks after the rumor had disseminated. Anthony's daily commute was long, so he would arrive and leave an hour early. I arrived at work almost 30 minutes early the previous morning, and it felt like I was the first person in the office. The front door was locked and the lights were off, so I entered by walking inside. When I stepped in, I had planned to leave most of the lights turned off except for the one near the desk to enjoy the low light levels until everyone else returned. The sound I heard as I passed through the almost dark building made me feel eerie, so I decided to listen to it while standing at my desk. I activated my desk light and put on my headphones to orientate myself for the day. During the darkness of my work, I observed a tall person within 10 minutes. Good day. Anthony was the one who. I was close to falling off. Anthony greeting. I didn't know you were present. I replied with a clear and concise, "Yup." A shadowy silhouette stood in plain sight of me, and he replied with a response. I endeavored to work and be inconspicuous without seeing him. It felt like a bygone time until I looked back and realized he was gone. This made me very uneasy. The experience of working with survivors of sexual abuse seems to have a terrible conclusion for my firm's work. Fortunately, there was no outcome. Upon my arrival at work, I found a note on my desk. Anthony's name was written on the question mark next to the lunch note. It was strange that he was accused of hitting on a colleague. I disposed of it and went with disregard. I was oblivious to his presence as I got up to get my lunch from the fridge. "Hi, Michelle. Good day. Please inform me. Have you thought about having lunch with someone?" I laughed and admitted that I didn't think it would be appropriate as I was getting married. I endeavored to get past him, but he persisted and blocked my path. "It's Michelle who comes to my aid. Is it possible to have a casual lunch with friends?" I chuckled and made a humorous joke, telling him to leave me alone. He let me go, but he appeared to smell the air as I passed by. He started to speculate about my perfume, which was completely inappropriate and strange. I arrived at my workplace the next day with a bottle of affordable perfume on my desk. A note was written by the individual, stating that, "Where is this? It's my favorite choice," with his signature on the note. I disposed of the perfume bottle in the garbage before heading to my boss's office to inform her. The news was so shocking that she couldn't believe it. Afterward, she disclosed that Anthony had done the same thing with my other colleague, but when confronted, he declared himself gay. She suggested that he might be friendly, but she hopes to brush it off and then engage in conversation with him. While making my way back, I observed Anthony standing in afar. He gave me the eerie look and waved at me. I was aware that Wire did not identify as gay. The staff had all left early on that Friday, but I didn't realize it until 5 p.m. after 20 minutes. I retrieved my belongings and intended to leave, but Anthony unexpectedly appeared at my desk. "Good day, lovely. Today, you seem to be a lovely person." I was already feeling down and had to respond by hitting him on the head. "Is your sexual orientation authentic, or are you just a creepy character?" He chuckled and pointed at the picture on my desk that showed me and my husband. "Does that make you gay?" he inquired. I observed that he cut out a picture of his face and placed it on my husband's forehead in the image. "What's the matter with you?" I screamed, expecting someone to hear me. "It's just us, you know." I felt sad when he tied me to a wall. Afterward, I shouted for support. "Put an end to that. There isn't a single person present," he screamed. He informed me that he would reveal his penis to me after I started wearing some pop pants. I began to scream and closed my eyes. He snatched my shirt and instructed me to take it off. "Say what you will. Just show me something, girl," he declared. I finally flung him in the balls with all my might, and then left the office. I arrived at work on the following Monday, prepared to communicate with my supervisor about everything that had occurred. She recounted that Anthony phoned her on Friday night and told her he had to quit. The accusers were getting angry and accusing him of neglecting something he didn't do. Despite being aware of his foul-mouthed nature, my boss was fortunate to find a way out and gave in. The story is meant for those who are troubled by the creepy workplace commotion. Take precautions. Despite its briefness, it was one of the most terrifying and distressing moments I've ever encountered. My mental health was also ruined by it. I'm a young woman from the West Coast who is 19 years old. I was a high school senior who was 17 years old at the time. The town I inhabit is small in size, but it has both favorable and unfavorable areas. It appears that there are skirsiders all over the place. The story relies heavily on this. I was brought up in the more prestigious neighborhood, and I also worked there. I was employed at the local chicken fast food establishment. I'm not going to disclose the name because I don't have a clue. After a month of being employed, I was eventually transferred to the drive-thru and took on orders in the front. Working in that line of work allows you to interact with a diverse group of people. The summer season is a mix of amusement and intrigue, making it an odd choice. Our front lobby was closed for an extended period due to COVID. Despite being one of the first nights, we opened the lobby. The lack of customer preference in the front resulted in a tedious experience. During our daily store closing, we had to tidy up parts of the store and efficiently distribute the cleaning expenses among colleagues. I want to make it known that I had a great fondness for all those people at work. We had a great time and there was no drama involved. The fact that most of us were familiar with each other at school made this night's experience more difficult to comprehend. Basically, I was washing my chicken warmers and there's a section where the water heater needs to be drained and cleaned. The device was not being depleted. My manager and I put in a lot of effort. Went outside and suggested that we use straws to suck, but ensure that they were not consumed. It was quite amusing. Upon arriving at the office, we were in search of an item to unclog the drain, but I was thrilled to see a customer walking towards us. Upon walking over there, I informed my manager that I was taking an order, but immediately turned around and avoided the guy's attention, which left me with the most terrible feeling in my life. I felt like my entire stomach had dropped off. My father, who was a former Marine, underwent extensive training in various aspects of the Marine Corps during their service. In essence, he taught me how to scrutinize people's conduct, gestures, and other significant aspects throughout my entire life. Upon reaching the front, this man quickly turned around, sensing that he had been tweaked and was facing an unfavorable outcome. His gaze turned towards him, and he was probably only 5 feet 11 inches to 6 foot tall. His pupils were the tiniest I've ever encountered, with a grim expression of anger on his face. He had a beanie and COVID mask, but it was evident that he had considerable range, possibly due to his need for drugs. He drew a gun out of his hoodie and pointed it at me, then proceeded to say, "I'm going to kick this guy out." I went into a thaw. I literally froze and started to stutter. I am clueless about how. That's the thing. Despite my lack of knowledge on how to open the register without taking an order, I was afraid that someone would mistake me for pressing an emergency button if I took too long. At that time, we had burglar alarms installed, but they were positioned in the most unattractive spots above the drive-thru window and in the freezer. What's the deal with? Oh, not cool. With the gun positioned inches away from my face, I believe I have two options: shooting myself in the head or running to work and risking my life. I jolted myself. I am indifferent to what anyone has to say. You never know what you're doing until you find yourself in that predicament. I informed my manager that we were being robbed, but he was skeptical when I told him. He didn't tell me to paint down and observe the man jumping over the counter. My manager inquired about my demands, and the individual in question adamantly offered to give me the money immediately. While I was hiding in the office, I saw Misty and Ali walking away from their coworkers who were going to call me names. I screamed for them to get down. They were both sisters. Ali's reaction was to become enraged as Misty pulled him down and caused him to cry. I advised her to be quiet and then let her know that it wouldn't make the dude feel frightened to shoot. The cash register slot was given to the individual by our manager due to their lack of cash or money. He is not letting go of wanting anything else. That's the thing. We had no more money on our hands. There was a time when I truly believed that was the end and my life was about to end. The entire matter revolved around my younger siblings and their upcoming events. Despite the age gap I experienced, I was involved in raising both of those children. I adored them to pieces. I couldn't have died there. Eventually, my manager gave the guy approximately $600 in rent money that he had just taken out of the bank that night. I immediately called 911 and I was trying to whisper and hide it. It's safe to say that the 911 operator was outstanding. Without delay, he made me feel relaxed and obtained all the necessary information. He stayed on the phone with me until the police arrived and continued to speak. "Rachel, I hope everything is going well." The ludicrous tweaker tumbled over the counter and withdrew most of the money and gun. He promptly departed from there. My manager retrieved the gun and proceeded to point it at him, dropping it on a tray. The place was cleared by the cops upon their arrival. Despite telling the officer that he had dipped, I still gave him my statement while bawling my eyes out. He inquired if I had the impression that my life was in danger. My mind was consumed by the idea of having a gun pointed at me. I inquired the officer if the gun was genuine. Just to be sure, you know. He confirmed it, and I posed the question that was always stuck in my mind. Was the safety mechanism activated? After he declined, I felt okay with the response. My confidence was definitely shaken, but I reached out to my mother and told her I was alright. After that, I headed back to my house. Without delay, she contacted my dad. Although my parents are divorced, our relationship was not the most positive when I was a child. There is no change in its current state. I had a tendency to keep quiet about unpleasant incidents that took place with me. He had asked me all the standard questions. How would you depict his physical features? How tall do you measure in height? Which ethnic group? Can you describe the appearance of the gun? You are aware of this. I requested my parents to keep it a secret because I didn't want to discuss it with anyone. It is evident that they were unable to. My dad's main objective was to track down the stew, which is capable of doing. The following day, I made an effort to go to school. During my second menstrual cycle, I experienced a severe anxiety attack. My school was very understanding when I was sent home and even provided counseling. I refrained from going, however, because the lady in charge of that is a complete disgrace. I experienced a minor mental breakdown before school and was kept at home by my mother for the majority of the week. My mom was given counseling resources by the police department for a desk lady, and I found an excellent therapist who helped me cope with the trauma. After this entire experience, I was diagnosed with PTSD and an anxiety disorder. I've mastered the skill of dealing with my fears of firearms and loud noises. There are a few moments during the day when I feel like I was on the brink of death.